Hey, thanks for checking out this video. My name is Matt, and in this Wikifreelancing channel, I do not only share effective tips for making money online as a freelancer or an entrepreneur, I also show you some skills to learn to increase your earning abilities. And in this video, we're going to learn how to do this professional text kinetic animation on Adobe After Effects using 3 techniques. Now, I featured these techniques in a recent project with my client, and I thought I could share the styles with you because, of course, you can make money working from home as a freelance video editor. So the first thing to do is to head over to After Effects and click on Create New Composition. Here we can name this, and leaving out the settings, 10 seconds is okay. Hit OK. Great. Now the first test is creative ideas, right? Now we can format this by going to paragraph, and then we bring it to the center of the workspace, right? Now, to have this cursor at the center, you can do 2 things. It's either you hold Ctrl, double click here, or you do Ctrl Alt on your keyboard, right? Now let's change this color to white. Here, go to character and change it back to white. Now what we want to do is to animate this, and the first step of the animation is just opacity. It's just a simple animation where you can drop down this, click on this animate, and add the opacity property, right? So at first we set the opacity to 0, and then open this range selector here and insert a keyframe and take this to this point and take it to 100%. So from this point to this point, it will animate and also reveal itself from the opacity. Fine, but it's quite slow, so we take it down to this point. Then we have this. One good thing we can do is to go to this advanced drop down and change this to word so that it animates by word and not by character, right? Perfect. Another thing to do is to select this last frame and ease it by using F9, or you can also right click, go to keyframe assistant and ease it, right? Great. Now, after the revelation of this first title, we want to rotate it as we see here. Rotate it and also scale it down, right? So after the revelation, at this point we want to rotate, right? So to do that, hit R and also Shift S for scaling. Now we have to add this key point here, and then take this to an end, maybe 2 seconds. Set the rotation to 90, start it to rotate this way, and also bring the scale down to this way, right? Let's bring it down now. Now the next thing to do is to introduce the second test. Now the second test will be, let's say, for After Effects, right? And then move it to this end. We can also use the paragraph to align it properly. Move it to this end, and it's also important to ensure that it aligns properly with the line of the first test. We can go to character, use some of these features here to adjust the text, or use move tool to do that. So what we would want to do here is to introduce this text from this end, and to do that we have to add the animation. So we click on this drop down to add the tracking animation here, and then coming down to this tracking amount, we have to set it to about this end. So the next thing is to include opacity property, so click here and opacity. First of all, we have to set the opacity to 0, and then open this range selector 1 and insert the first keyframe, so that at this point we then take the keyframe to 100%. So this is what we have, right? Great. Now I want to set this, go to advanced tab here and set this to word instead of character, and that will give us the animation come by word. Perfect. Now the introduction of the second test should come immediately this rotation is implementing, right? So we have to take this to key points at this point so that it starts introducing at that point. Let's see what we have. Perfect. Perfect. Now the next thing to do is to work on the contrast. You see that we're having a bit issue with it. So since everything is white, it's boring and less appealing to the eye, right? So text, we have to change the color of this first text. Immediately it starts animating. So at this point, we start changing the text, and how we can do that is to go to this creative idea, and at this point we use effect to generate a fill color, right? The first time we have to set it to the original color of white, and then insert a keyframe, then take this to where it stops animating and set this color to any color of our choice, maybe the color of the brand or something, but I think this is perfect. Now hit OK. Now let's see what we've got. At this point of animation, we're scaling it down and changing the color at the same time. Perfect. Now the next step is to animate this, to rotate this to the side so that we can introduce the next step, which is the next. So we've gone over the first technique and the second technique of having this come from here, and then the third would be to animate two of them to this point before we introduce the next. First of all, let's add motion blur to this to make it also smoother. Amazing. Now I have to add another layer here. Go to layer, new, and no object. Now we can hit enter to call this function 1, and then select these two by holding your shift or control button, and then connect it to this layer so that we can use this layer to control the two, right? And the first thing to do here is to set this cursor to this point because we want it to rotate from this end, just like we rotate from here. So the cursor is at this point rotating this. Now that we've got this, the next thing to do is to start the rotation, right? So after this first animation and this animation, from here let's start rotating. So we hit R and then insert a keyframe, and then get to another point, maybe here, and set this keyframe to -90 to get this right. Let's see what we've got. Amazing, but it looks somehow dull, so there's a little bit of wasting of time there. So let's see if we can change this. After this, before it starts rotating, we have to go to this creative idea. That is where we did the rotation. So from here we'll have to set this to this point to start rotating almost immediately. So let's see. Amazing. Now we also have to go to the second one and also adjust the rotation of this. So this one started rotating from this end, so we can take it down to almost immediately after the first animation here. Here we start rotating, right? So let's select this and push it down to this end. Fine, and also use F9 to ease ease, right? Perfect. Now the next thing to do is to reposition this. Let's arrange this so that everything will fall in place. So I think this is the perfect place for it. Now let's see. Amazing. Now we'll have to introduce the next text, which is the final text, right? We have to arrange this properly to align with the lines of the other text. What we need to do is to introduce this big text from the bottom, almost at the end of this first and second technique. Here We then introduce this from the bottom, and to do that we have to select the text and freelancing. This is the text here. So first of all we have to add animation here to introduce the, first of all let's do position, so that we can position this down to come from the bottom, right? Then at this point we also have to add another property, which is opacity. Then at this point we also have to set the opacity to 0. Now we open this range selector here and insert the keyframe, and towards this end we would then take this to 100. So let's see what we've got there. Amazing work, but that's quite fast, so we'll have to take this to this point and also use F9 to ease it. Now let's have a look again. Amazing. Let's go down to this advanced and select this word instead of character, depending on what you want to animate with. Now let's see how it goes. A little bit slower, so we can just take this to this point. Let's see. Amazing. Now the next thing to do is to change this color. You see that the color contrast is also having a lot of issue here, so we have to change this color again. This is scaling down. This first text is scaling down and rotating at the same time and changing the color at the same time, so that we can introduce the second, which has a white color. Right now, during this rotation we would want to change this first text of creative ideas to white color, and also change the second text to this brownish color. Right now, so at this point of rotation we'll do two things: changing this to this color and changing this to this color. And to do that, let's start with this for After Effects test. So at this point we'll have to go to effects to use effect to generate a fill color, making sure that this particular text is selected. So here is the second text. We use effect to generate fill color. At first we have to set this color to the initial color of white, so that we can insert this keyframe here and say from there to this point of completion of animation we want it to change to this other color. Perfect. So now what we have is this. Amazing. Also we have to change the color of the first text back to white. So during this transformation also we should also transform the white, for example here, but we have already used the color effect on the first text before, so it will be easier for us. The easier way to do that is just to hit U, right, and then come down to this. So here you see where the color change started for this one, and during this animation, during this rotation process, we want to start changing it again. So what we want to do is to add a keyframe for the color here, and then move this to the end of the animation, and then add another one, or just change this to white. This way we'll have this rotating and scaling down, and also changing the color to brown, and then introducing this text, and then rotating them. In the process of rotation you switch the color to each other, and then we have this. Amazing. Now what we want to do is to change the color of the third text, which is the big text. We have to grab this just to work on the color contrast, so that it will look more appealing to the eye. So we'll have this, and then select some of this, just reducing it bit by bit, so it doesn't look like the same color. Right, you can always play around with the colors here as long as they fit each other. And now the last freelance here, I change the color to this end. Amazing. So this is what we have. This and this. Now there is something else we need to do. Watch closely. You see that after this transition here, you see this this color also traveled through each word of the third text here. You see the blue traveling, right? We have to achieve that. At this point we have to work on this third text, and we have to grab it here. First of all, click on the animate, fill color, and add RGB. We want to start this effect at the beginning of this animation, right? So first of all, we have to change the color to our primary color here. We drop this down, range selector, and then add the first end keyframe here. Take it down to 0. Take this up. After some time, we add the start point, and then take it way to this side. Take the end to 100 so that it will reveal this color, and just immediately after that we also take the starting color to white, so that it also, this one will just bridge in and out, right? So this is what we have. Amazing. But it's going by word, by character, so we have to select this, click on this advanced, and change this back to word. Amazing. But this is quite slow, so let's go back to this. First of all, we have to is this function, that is F9, and then take this closer and see what we've got. This one also should come closer. This is the main point of transformation here, so let's go. So this makes sense to me. Now this is what we've got for the third one. Amazing. Now you may want to also see that here we reverted the animation. To do that is super simple for you. What you need to do is to select this text layers and hit U to reveal the point. Now you can take this up to see it clearer. Now the next thing to do is to revert this, right? So after this whole animation, we then move a bit, and let me take this up, and then select the, because we are going to use this range selector, so we have to select this range selector, the starting point, which is here for this text, and here for this text, and here for this text. Starting point of the range selector, right? Now when we move this to this point, we then switch this to 0, switch this to 0, and then switch this to 0. So this will help us to animate out the whole thing. You see, just select these keyframes and push them to the back so that it will be faster. Now let's go. Smooth. Okay, let's see what we have. Let's see. Great creative ideas for After Effects, earn money with freelancing. So this is a simple trick on how to revert your animation. You can also extend the timing, work on the timing depending on the exact time you want your reverse animation to start. So you see this, make money online, and then reversing one after the other. That's the end of today's video. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell, and until the next one, keep earning more income. Thank you.